Hey guys, I'm Brianna Rangel with the San Antonio Public Library Esports Committee. We'll be discussing esports and education. I'm also here with Cassie Garza and Edward Mayberry. So we're going to go ahead and start introducing our panelists for today.
Yeah, Chris Sines, founder of Texas Gaming Empire, store manager of Play Live Nation. Yeah.
I'm Alexia Oscano. I'm the president over at Roadrunner Gaming for the University of Texas at San Antonio.
Howdy, my name is Fernando Garcia, and I go attend Cass Tech High School, and I am the club president and esports director at CTG Esports.
Hi, I'm James Taylor. I'm a student at Cass Tech High School, and I'm also the treasurer of the gaming club and an R6 player.
Hello, I'm Domingo Ruiz. I am the sponsor for Bobcat Esports at Southside High School.
Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin Piniente. I am the head esports coach at St. Mary's University.
Hi, I'm Travis Yang. I'm the head esports coach for Texas A&M San Antonio.
Awesome. So our questions so far are, what place does esports have on education?
Can I take the floor?
Go ahead.
From what I've experienced, when we first started running our gaming club back, try to get it off the ground freshman year and going into the sophomore year, a lot of people just played video games and played it on their own time just for fun. And we ended up finding out about this website called the High School Esports League. And what ended up happening is we started competing in the High School Esports League in Rainbow Six Siege. And we decided, hey, this is really awesome. We want other people to experience it. But we had some people of the crowd in the gaming community that just kind of just like flopped with their grades, but they loved gaming. But to give them the opportunity for them to compete under us and to win scholarship money in the same time, is that they had to start working on the grades. So you see these kids that are like at the lower tier, about the 70s, 75s, all the way pushing themselves forward to reaching the high 80s, low 90s. And it's just absolutely mind-boggling, because once they have the opportunity for them to compete at a national level and to make a name for themselves, they will do everything that's possible, and it's shown in their grades and also their attitude in the education space.
I'll chime in exactly what Fernando said. We see the same thing at the collegiate level. Esports and gaming in general is already a great motivator for students. It helps develop traits that are desirable, as we see in traditional sports. So I think a lot of the reason why we see universities starting to jump into it now is because they're finally starting to see those same positive applications of esports, and it's just now that the systems are coming in place to support those, like the scholarships and at the high school level, and even now at the middle school level. I've personally, I think I touched on this in an earlier panel, but I've seen success stories like, students who finish high school and maybe they didn't have the best grades, right? They higher education or pursuing a college degree wasn't kind of for them, or so they told themselves. And it's not that, if you don't go to university, it makes you a bad person. Everyone's got their own thing. But, they were telling themselves like, hey, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough to go to college. So we've had students that at a previous institution I worked for, we were able to help, get them on a conditional admit status, to get their foot in the door and have them attend classes. And then by year one, after year one, they're off conditional admit, they're full-time, they're doing fine, right? And they gain that confidence to keep going. So, that just kind of speaks to the power of esports, because up until this point, traditional sports has been able to do that really well. But for those students who, they weren't basketball players, they weren't football players, or, they weren't into traditional sports, esports covers a whole new kind of population of potential students.
Yeah, to kind of expand on that, the esports, it just brings that team atmosphere and really builds those life skills and character skills that are important, not just for the immediate, but for your long-term success.
Yeah, I will say on our end, my computer maintenance class, the educational part was the reason our esports program came. It was students telling me, because back then computer maintenance was actually almost a class that you don't hear about that much anymore, because who uses desktops, who uses, just go buy a new one. But I had students that convinced me to build a game system with some funds we had at the end, and then they're the ones that started telling me all about esports and what they could do. And from that, it kind of took off, and the class became more relevant with my students. And so I had one student, really quick, I had a student who, one of those students who just kind of going through the system, wasn't sure what he was going to do. And he had an opportunity to build a system for the first time in my class. And actually that year, he was actually afraid to even put the processor in. He just didn't want to take that. Now he's working for a company here locally, doing that on a daily basis, building systems. So there you go. I mean, it's just proof right there.
If I can jump in here to kind of mirror what everyone else has said, I think one of the very interesting things about esports in a school setting is that it also opens up opportunities to learn new skills. So it's not just the communication, teamwork, and critical thinking that you get by playing these games in a team setting. It's also a lot of the supporting roles, like the student volunteers and interns that we have who help with our broadcasting of our matches and other things. Those are skills that they're learning now that they can translate to other industries and other workplaces. There's something to be said about running, either a club or a program where, you don't just need the players, you need all of the roles that are supporting the players. Learning how to make and run a budget, learning how to run an event start to finish. There is a lot of opportunity in esports to branch out, I think. I think if you are curious about something, there is a lot of opportunity in esports to start getting your feet wet and figuring out, okay, what is it that I like? Okay, maybe I don't like making budgets. Maybe I actually really enjoy the production and broadcasts of esports matches and tournaments and what have you.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is that I learned through my internship, just high schoolers in general, the ones that don't necessarily want to play the normal sports that everyone wants to, they'll find friends just through gaming, whether or not there's a program, but the program in place really gives incentive for them to build relationships that they'll last beyond even just at school, since they can just go home, probably play games if they're able to. And it kind of just engages them also with their schoolwork, because now they don't feel like they're alone. They don't feel probably as depressed if they were depressed in the first place or anxious to talk to people. They have like a support system of people, friends that are also their teammates.
And at the high school level of esports, I feel like any other sports, it gives them that pathway and opportunity to go to great colleges like St. Mary's and A&M and UTSA and join those great teams. And it gives them that opportunity for scholarships and just to get through that.
Did anybody else have anything else to add before we move on to the next question?
I'll add an interesting tidbit. So at St. Mary's, within the athletic department, the average GPA of a student athlete is the 3.64, but we have competitions within our athletics department to see which team, which roster can not only, beat that average, but exceed it. So I think right now our women's volleyball team technically has the highest average GPA, but it is a big motivator for our students who are already inherently competitive to not just, play at a high level on their esport team, but also academically try to exceed their student athlete peers.
Just to share a similar story, because kind of brought up when I was at Ashland University, 100%. In the athletics department, the women's basketball team, they basically carry the department in terms of the GPA. And then, we had like men's football with like a, 2.3 average or something we don't want to talk about. In esports, of course, educators and upper administration, they kind of come in assuming esports will do better on the GPA side because usually it's more STEM associated. But that being said, esports also sees a lot of non-traditional students. So it's definitely an area as a program you have to focus on. But absolutely what Caitlin said, I think, if you kind of throw in that competitive aspect to it and like, hey, you're being compared to the football team or the basketball team, stuff like that, it kind of puts a different perspective on it for the students.
That it motivates them to like do better, like, hey, let's prove to see that us gamers can actually do something. So is there like any real difference between like the high school, college, and professional settings of esports being involved in all of this?
I think personally you're always going to see differences at every level. There's just different level of competition. And also you have to consider the pipeline of how those players got there. In professional esports, they're not necessarily pulling from the top college teams. Now that could be subject to change, but over the past 5 years, we haven't seen an overwhelming, action that top college players end up on the top professional teams. Whereas in the college level, we're still kind of in our infancy as to how we recruit top talent and how we build top talent. How do we build successful teams year after year? Because every year in college, your team is essentially new. You've got your students that graduate, your students that come in. I can't quite speak to how it is at the high school level, but in my experience, that's what it's been for us.
I can just say at the high school level, we made it a point to try to recruit freshmen this year a lot, try to draw in, because good example is our League of Legends team. League of Legends team, we had an opportunity to play in the tournament coming up, but I could not field the League of Legends team because we lost 3-4 out of the 6 players that we had, and to fill that position, it was a little bit difficult. One, because some students didn't know the game. Some students want to know the game, but they don't have a PC at home. So that's why esports in high school level comes into play, because you give them an opportunity to play on a PC. And so that leads to another obvious difference when you look at universities and professional level, and they see them on TV and they see them, oh, they got PCs. We want to play. That's at some way, especially like my school. My school is a Title I school, so it's a lot of lower income households. A lot of students that can't afford to get a PC, and so the PC is the promised land for them to get one. They see they're playing on Xboxes, on PS4s, and so that's an obvious difference. But that's why, with us, I know that was a big component for us to get to PCs, because when I started the program, I looked around, talked to different colleges. They play on PC, so I said, well, we're going to play on PC. And that's what we're going to do. And so this gives them an opportunity to play on PC. It gives them that feeling of like, I'm part of it. And it helps to make the transition going to college, because now it's kind of like they have a place to go. They know they're familiar with something already before they even set foot on campus. So that's why there's some big differences in there, but it's hopefully we're closing the gap. At least that was my goal with the program.
I completely agree with Mr. Domingo, because when we first started working on our esports program, there weren't that many high schools. There was maybe about like 3 unique high schools in the nation that like their names stood out, and they had like a great program already. So some of them from New York, some from California, and others from Texas. And the way and how we ended up having to bring in and motivate the administrators to allow us to have this opportunity is because of the colleges, because they're giving away scholarships. They have different opportunities within them, and that is like a set in stone organization. Now, earlier Caitlin said that there's a challenge of filling up those people that are like entering into the high school scene as freshmen, but also the seniors that are leaving. So we've actually been running into that problem as of right now, because most of us are Rainbow Six, what we're known for is the Rainbow Six team, and all of us are practically seniors except for 2. So we're trying to recruit at a younger level. But the one thing that I've kind of experienced and seen other high schools kind of having, especially like the ones in New York and California, it's more of like a free-for-all when I say that. It's because a lot of the kids are very competitive with themselves. And since there's high schools are very huge, and like if they find out that they have a gaming club, everyone's going to end up like chipping in and trying to get fight for their spot on a roster. Granted, there can be like rosters with 12 people, but at the high school level, what we've personally experienced is like if you are putting in the work and you're willing to learn, then that's something that's shown, and those players get more opportunities. Well, at the college level, like we know it's like, oh, they have an esports program. We definitely want to go try it over there, see if we can get accepted over there first of all, and then go through the trials process and like your spot's secure. Well, at the high school level, I feel like it's definitely like rough, and also with certain leagues, a lot of the players that are going to the professional scene are going to be on the younger end, depending on the game. Like Fortnite, we saw, of course, Booga, the 16-year-old that won $3 million. He ended up already like going into the professional scene. Some other people, they're going to wait till a little bit older. And if you have achieved that like at such a young age, you're not going to actually be able to compete in some high school leagues. So it is helpful that we have our own league where it's like, okay, if you're not at the professional tier, we can give you an opportunity to compete. And then college is the next like highest tier. Of course, the professional league is like the highest tier, but college is definitely that stepping stone where people are saying, hey, this is a legitimate thing. Our school's being paid for. And also, all these people have more time to practice and dedicate it to themselves, and they've had that experience over the years in high school. If they're playing by themselves or playing on a high school team, they have that experience, and bringing that out to a college level, it's definitely a difference.
And at the high school level, I feel like one of the differences, it's still very new to the high school level, and there's not as much support to actually help build that up. So a lot of the players are focusing on both playing and building up the community for high school level.
I think that's a super unique opportunity that we have here. Is this is such a new industry going forward. We're really pioneers, paving a way for a new enterprise, and building this up. And so that's why one of the key things for Texas Gaming Empire right now is trying to build like a high school versus high school league in person, or even started off online with the COVID situation, and also hosting college versus college stuff. So that way you can give the colleges an area to recruit in person and get to know the student athletes. Hopefully with that league, like Fernando was saying, then that'll generate more interest from the high schoolers to apply and be committed to the high school team, as well as the college teams, and that'll give them more visibility for the pros to be able to get eyes on them and see them in person live events, because in person is awesome.
And I mean, I think there's really, really something special to be said about like San Antonio Public Library, like just doing this panel series, just having that support from, I mean, for those of us that are from San Antonio, like I remember as a kid, that field trip where you go to the public library, and it's like, now we're kind of coming full circle that, for some of us, this is our job, and, we want to give back and invest back. And that's what the San Antonio Public Library is doing with this panel series, is highlighting these topics, but also working to build that, monetary gap that exists in esports. And I feel like that comes up like almost every single panel, is that we know there's a barrier to entry to compete in esports, and a lot of it is because our games are on PC, right? And PCs, we know, are going to be much more expensive than the PlayStation or the Xbox, those self-contained systems. And so I think the San Antonio Public Library, like investing in these kind of initiatives, the panel series and everything else they have up their sleeve, only helps to make our city more of a, I wouldn't say powerhouse yet, but a really interesting and special hub for esports in Texas, not just because of the colleges who are involved or these awesome high school programs that are coming up, or our third parties that support the scene, but also that, almost household name of the public library, bringing it together and bringing it to the masses.
I mentioned before, San Antonio maybe in Texas is behind in some ways when we look at, like, say, the professional level, but when we look at, the K through 12 and college, in many ways we're primed to lead the way here. I mean, look at this panel. We've got 3 major universities here. We've got 2 high schools. We've got of course, the public library involved. I just met actually 2 days ago with a club, a teacher from, I think it was Whittier Middle School, and he's starting a gaming club. That's crazy, There's not that many places really around the country that have, seen that kind of buy-in at each of these individual levels. So for people who are watching this panel, hopefully this kind of inspires them, whether you're just observing, or you're a student yourself, or someone interested in esports. Like, it is happening. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and Incarnate Word has an esports club. I spoke with somebody at Trinity. They're trying to talk. They work in the admin, and they're trying to talk their department into actually making a esports athletic department, like A&M and St. Mary's. And I think on a corporate level, there are a lot of people and businesses that are willing to invest in it. They just don't know about it yet. And that's also one of our focuses, is to try and kind of bridge that gap where you have, like, big money and then the grassroots, and bring those together, so that way we can lower those thresholds, like we've been talking about with affordable PCs and stuff like that, to try and get back end funding to make it accessible for more people to get involved and really watch this scene grow. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to just trying to get funding, and also kind of at convincing administrators that esports needs to be built, because I've been reached out to like different departments at UTSA, just seeing like what exactly do gamers and what does esports need to actually play on campus, or how can people get together and play. And it's been kind of weird, because I will offer some things, but they still kind of, from the business perspective, don't understand why you need like more than like 6 computers, or like why or what scene does it need to be in, like athletics department, the student union, campus recreation. Like at UTSA, that's kind of the conversation that's been happening. And for us, it kind of sucks right now, especially because we're through, we're club sport through the campus rec. So we get funding through them, but right now there's no funding because of COVID-19. And outside of that, we can play in open division leagues. We can't play in the varsity leagues because we're not a varsity program, we're just a club sport. So we can get, you know, scholarships, money that we went through there, but that goes to our players ideally that play in those competitions.
I was just gonna mention on the yeah, because funding. I just had a meeting. I talked to the representatives from the credit work high school yesterday, and we were talking about the program and the educational side, curriculum, but then also the the funding part, or you know, the system part. Where are you going to get them? Where are they going to come from? And yeah, I have to say it wasn't an easy road, but you know, we've been fortunate. Had supportive administrators, and so, but then it also breeds creativity. The students, you know, you give them an opportunity, you know, and then they're into it. They start to come up with ideas. The last year, you know, we're getting ready to, you know, once our, you know, we're going to have 12 systems, and which we, again, because of COVID, yeah, with the shutdown, we were ready to have that set up. And but the unique thing about us is that I want to maintain in our program is that we build our systems. And so through my CTE department, that's where, you know, I'm able to get some of the funding, because through, you know, basically, you know, what I've said is that this gives our students the opportunity to put into practice what they've been learning in theory. And so basically we're buying the parts, and because of that, you know, we're able to use some of the funding through our CTE department to buy the parts, and that becomes an assignment where I let the students, like, here's our budget for each different system, and so build it or give me the parts. And so they, of course, were restricted with certain vendors on who we can purchase on through the district, and so we bought the parts, and so my students are building them, and that is where it started, and that's where I want to keep my program at, that it's coming through the students. And then you get creative. Like last year, you know, we had the games that the systems, majority of them that we played our League of Legends tournament league on last year came from refurbished systems that we got from the architect class, because the lab got new systems. And so one of my students told me, hey, you know, they have different, because they have to run AutoCAD, all these different graphic design software programs on their systems. So I just asked IT, what are you going to do with those systems? Is there a way that we can get our hands on at least 5 of them? And so they said, sure. They were just in the closet, just there. And so we got them. I told them, we don't need anything done to them. My students will wipe them clean. And we did, and then set them up, loaded League of Legends. Our network administrator is a great, you know, we have a great relationship with him. So he supported us, and there we go. And so that's how we got our systems that we started off to play the league. So you start to get creative on, you know, and look around. And that's what I was telling, like in the meeting yesterday with Inspired Word, is look around and see what you have and see what you can get your hands on. Super Smash, you know, is a great game, popular game. You know, there's some televisions around that you could use. All you need is a cable, HDMI to DVI or VGA converter, and there you go. You know, so it starts to bring creative, and the students will flourish in that area if you give them the opportunity. So
that's so funny about the TVs. When we were setting up our arena, facilities and IT asked me, you know, is there anything that we're missing that we need? And I was like, you know what? Do you guys have any CRTs on campus? And so they looked in, you know, any closet here or there, and they were able to dig some up for us, because, you know, it was just one of those things for playing Melee, you know, having the CRT is like part of the culture. And so, yeah, that one thing we didn't have to buy, because we're like, I'm sure we have it somewhere on campus. We just have to locate it.
They're probably like, really? You want these old monitors?
They laughed. They couldn't hold it together. And I was like, trust me on this one, guys.
One thing I wanted to say real quick, actually, for Alexia over at UTSA, and I'm sure this is no news to you. I'm sure this is stuff you've already spent a good amount of time on. But just my observations with other varsity programs that have started across the country, it can really feel like it's hit or miss at times. If you don't have that champion already on campus who's already in upper administration, you could be talking to like a brick wall, right? Because you're gonna be talking to people who don't know what it is, and they just don't have the time or the interest for it. But if you can, happen to, I'm sure you've already tried looking for it, and hopefully, you can find someone in upper administration who has a personal interest in esports for whatever reason, and they can become kind of your champion, to spread it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, now that ourselves and St. Mary's have varsity programs, UTSA is already having those conversations at to some extent at the upper administrative levels. But if there's anything we can do to help, whether it's having our administration talk to UTSA's administration or bringing us over to speak to them, I'm sure we'd love to, because right now it's definitely a spirit of cooperation. And I know we would love to make that happen if possible.
And I know Travis and I have talked about this in the past, right now, like this year 1, year 2, year 3, it isn't necessarily about rivalries. Right now, it's about building the framework and the infrastructure that, at its core, esports doesn't exist if you don't have competition, if you don't have someone to play against. So it's not necessarily like building the rivalries, it's making sure my opponent can show up. And so I also feel like a lot of esports is just right place, right time, with the right person. And I think that's kind of how it was at St. Mary's, is that we have an athletics director that, really saw something in this idea and ran with it, and has been our champion this entire time. And I mean, honestly, I don't think I would have been as keen on this job if I wasn't so impressed with our athletics director.
And that's one thing, like, seeing in San Antonio that I've really been liking with the whole esports community, is that everyone in San Antonio and like everyone here, we've been focusing on community versus competition first, growing the community. And that's really good to see.
Yeah, and that's where our universities and our high schools really is important, that relationship, because I know we've had Travis has come out, and Caitlin, I know you were at our tournament earlier this year, and then we had it was Robert and Chad that came from St. Mary's. They came over and they visited our practice, and so the students get excited, students, and then it's an opportunity for them to talk to them and see what's going on, so that relationship is really crucial to help build, and it's kind of from the top down, and just as James was saying right now, it's building that. I'm glad when they came over, when Cass came over and they wanted to stream at our tournament. I'm like, yeah, sure, come and can we do our stream from there? Yeah, sure. They're shoutcasting. I'm like, yeah. So they came, set up, and we're all working together to try to expand it, keep it growing.
I just want to add to Domingo's comment too, is getting the word out so that the community can grow. And that's one of the reasons why, San Antonio Public Library wanted to create this panelist discussion. Before we started this initiative, we did a survey with some of our patrons, and one of the main things was like, how do we find out about events, venues, where do we go, schools, high schools, like how do patrons in our community that we serve, how do we find out? And so that was one of the the most common question that a lot of these surveys expressed was, where do we get the info? And so the library does have a LibGuide that our public can access, and we provide all the info that we have for our events. If you want to promote any of your events, we're more than happy to share that information as well. The more the merrier about sharing information, especially in regards to this topic.
For any middle school or high school, like how would they go about like maybe getting funding to get like those set equipment?
For something like that, I'd say it all starts with just finding a teacher, administrator, anyone like that actually supports it, and then starts from there. And then depending on how like your school and like administrators react to it, you have to take the initiative to like do a lot of the stuff yourself and show them like what could come out of this.
Right. I was just gonna say yeah, I was gonna say something to start with. Just make an announcement. I when we first started, we made an announcement. And we had over 100 students show up in my room, and I was like, that's too much. I literally stood in on a chair, trying to so make sure everybody heard me. And right away, the first thing I did as soon as that meeting was over, I sent an email down to my administrator and told them, this is how many students we had, and can I continue? And he said yes, and it just snowballed from there. With us, with the junior highs, it just as James was saying right now, it just takes one person to start it. And with us, we actually have talked about actually last year at our tournament for our Super Smash tournament, we had one of a junior high student on our team, and he was coming to the practices and everything, and so he was going through everything. And when we had the tournaments, my grandson, I just said, well, you know what, we're going to match them up. So we started them, making sure in the tournaments that they're playing against each other. And so, so they could at least, if someone advanced to the second level, and that was exciting to them. So, so now we've talked like, I have students right now asking if their younger brother or sister wants to, if it's okay. We just started, with the jerseys, and it's like, well, my brother wants one. Can he get one? And I'm like, sure. They can get one. Can we get one for my sibling? And they're at the junior high. And so we talked about actually creating a Super Smash tournament for the junior high, the high school, the middle schools, I'm sorry. And so that's something we have planned also, of course, everything, but it's still on the radar, something we want to do. And so that's all it takes to get it going.
Yeah, to kind of expand on that, something we did with Central Catholic, I'd mentioned in another podcast, but they actually wanted to do a recruiting event since they're private and they need to recruit students, and we helped them run Smash Brothers, FIFA, and Fortnite in their historic gymnasium. It was pretty awesome. There was probably like 150 middle school, junior high students there participating in the different tournaments and getting to see Central Catholic as well. So I think that'll be very successful for you.
I think this advice can kind of apply to any level. Like if you're a student wanting to bring this to your school, I think number one, have the grades, right? If you can time manage all of your courses and you're excelling in them, then that'll kind of show, okay, I can add more to my plate. Number two, find a champion, right? Partner with someone in your school, whether it's a teacher, administrator, a PE coach, whomever, who can help be the liaison, essentially. Number three, have a plan. Find out how many students are interested, what games, what competitions are out there for you. Like coming empowered with that research is already going to put you head and shoulders above just the initial idea. And number four, leverage your resources. See what you can find for free, whether it's finding CRTs in the storage or, another class just decommission their computers. What can you already use on campus? I think coming to your school administration with those four things can put you in a really good place to start having that conversation. By no means can it be guaranteed, but it's a really good place to start.
So on how we actually started our club, it was a total of 3 people that reached out to me, and they're like, hey, we know your background and we want to start it up. So then we contacted one of the teachers, and they immediately said no, because only one of y'all is currently passing your class. And we're like, oh, okay. Then they gave up, and I was like, no, I want to continue pushing for this, asking different teachers, and I was getting a bunch of no's. And then eventually we found our teacher, who wasn't a full-on teacher at the time, and he was like, yeah, of course, I would love to help y'all out once I become a full teacher, because he was a permanent substitute at the time. Long story. But we ourselves, it wasn't like the teachers physically meeting. It was myself, James, and a few other individuals that went out of our way, started working on these presentations and going up to administration, meeting with the principal every month or so. It's like, all right, here's our progress. Here's what other people are doing. Like the esports is seeing more than the championship football matches that are going on, and we know that it's going to be the future. So it was just initially us continuously pushing, making sure our grades are good, of course, but to continuously push ourselves and constantly not letting it go and letting it fall behind the cracks. And talking about equipment wise, at the very beginning and still now, we still bring in our own equipment because we're very passionate about it. We want to have others have the same joy and success that we found. So we bring in our own equipment. But one thing that's definitely helped us out is running small paid entry. So about $2.50, $5 tournaments that are held on the weekends, or sometimes like a dance and Super Smash Bros. Tournament at the same time. We have these like, oh, it's $5, and that helps our club to go pay for these people to go to tournaments, pay into different leagues, and as well as to get them equipment down the road. So that's definitely like the first start. It's just running fundraisers.
I mean, nowadays there's a bunch of startups for esports specifically, like targeting high school level students, kind of offering financial assistance, and also just kind of educating their parents and teachers. And there's like the high school esports league, I think it is, and then they started the middle school esports league as well just recently. And that's just giving more opportunities for teachers to realize that these kids can participate and gain scholarships at even the middle school level.
I'd say persistence. You got to stay persistent. You're going to run across a lot of obstacles in the way, but you just got to stay passionate and persistent and keep persevering through it. And also, that's why I'd love to have that panel exhibition match and stuff to really bring everybody together, and especially the admin and staff at schools that don't currently have esports, so that way they can really see the kind of impact that it has in the community. And I really feel like that'll be a big accelerator in helping us move things forward.
So due to COVID, it's messed up a whole bunch of things right now for everybody. So how are you guys are competing during this time, or even like training your athletes?
Well, I feel like for esports, they kind of have it easy because most of it is online anyways. Gaming is online. And especially with high school esports league, all the tournaments are online. The only problems are like if you're planning to host LAN tournaments or things like that, that would be the only problem. But most of it, we could still practice online. We could still go to our tournaments online and all that.
And we've actually kind of run into some struggles ourselves because before COVID, we actually would LAN party out, all practice are the same. We would see every single person's monitor and would practice, and that's on how we grew like our team like bonding skills, because if you don't like each other, that's gonna like fall flat. And that was one of the best ways that we can actually get to know each other and become not just friends, we're physically like family at this point because we see each other all the time. Of course, COVID kind of like threw a wrench into the mix, but it's just those people that are passionate and those who are go-getters, they're going to be like, hey, we're not going to let something stop us. We're going to continue practicing. We're going to practice on this day at this set time, and no matter what, y'all are going to be there. And that's definitely helped out, of course, since everything's online. But it's just those players that are continuously passionate about what they're doing and competing in has continued us like success, and also wanting us to move forward.
Just really quick, I know for us too at the high school level, it's it was easy at the beginning of the year to make an announcement, and then you have all the students show up, and then I had students in my class and things like that. But now that had to change, and so we had our first meeting online, and so from there it's that there were still a lot of students who were missing, but that's another. It was an issue, but you'll find your way, and so with Discord, that's like been our just this is the way we're meeting, and then I have couple of administrators helping me. I have a code for Smash, and then I have two graduates who really wanted to make sure our program was still going, so they wanted to stay involved. So I put them in as admin, and they've become captains on teams. And so we have game reps who kind of funnel down. Makes it's hard for me as to keep track of if you got 80 or 100 players, but if I can get game reps and work build that structure, then it makes it easier. I just have to talk to the game reps or to the admins, and then they relay the messages. So that's how and then everything's online too, the games, and so we're fortunate in that sense.
Just with what Fernando said, absolutely. As a coach, the importance of having people be able to play together in person is kind of a number one priority for me, and that's what would have happened if circumstances were more normal. That being said, we had our start of the season meetings last week, and I told them right off the bat, I said, obviously normally would prefer this happen in person, but with COVID, I'm going to be as accommodating as possible. So if you guys don't feel comfortable playing here, we can arrange for you to practice at home. So for our Smash practices that started on Monday, for example, we have 3 kids who are coming to the actual facility on campus and playing, and the other 2 are playing from home. And sure, it's not optimal, but we make it work because it's safety first, right? And I want the students to feel comfortable. So but in regards to tournaments and stuff, that happens online anyways. So Not too much of an adjustment there, but mainly in terms of practices, that's kind of where the most adjustment has had to occur.
And yeah, we're in a similar boat at St. Mary's. I took a slightly different approach in that we reserved our esports arena specifically for the students who did not have the equipment so that we could really minimize any risk during tryouts. One thing that, you know, I talked to my colleagues in the athletics department about was, you know, before esports arenas, esports clubs just operated online. We did tryouts online, we did practices online, we did everything online. So there's no reason that we can't operate the same way now. It's unfortunate that we can't use, you know, the full capacity of our arena, but we want to keep everyone safe. And so every day we'll schedule maybe 1, 2, or 3 kids to come practice or to do their tryouts in person. And then, you know, try to be as flexible as possible with our players. It's really just a balancing act, and you know, we're wanting to keep everyone safe and healthy because, you know, forbid anyone gets sick, we're all going offline. It doesn't matter if you play Overwatch and we play League over here. It's the whole thing.
Texas Gaming Empire and Play Live Nation, obviously Play Live is a venue, so that, you know, all revolves completely around in person. So as a venue, it's really been hurtful. I feel like things are starting to pick up. Hopefully COVID continues to die down as the economy starts to pick back up and stuff. And then on Texas Gaming Empire, our model was mainly around in person to try and provide those, you know, pro tournament type experiences where you get the in-person competition. So I mean, online is awesome, but you know, there's nothing like in-person competition, which I think everybody can attest to. That's why they like to do the practices in person and stuff like that. You build the camaraderie with your team. And so I had initially tried to kind of transition to doing some online stuff, but there's already so much online stuff. It's really hard to stand out, and there's just a lot more complications. So I've really taken this time to try and focus on a lot of the back end stuff. Like I kind of already mentioned, trying to get the corporate world to kind of notice here in San Antonio, to try and notice what we're doing on the grassroots level and to try and bring that back end support. So that way we can provide a lot more opportunities for people, increase our prize support to get more people interested, and just really evolve and grow the in-person stuff, even though we can't currently do in-person stuff. So that way, once we can, we'll come in, you know, really guns a-blazing and full throttle and ready to rock and roll.
And just like Caitlin said, Roadrunner Gaming is a club that we've been doing like our tryouts online, which for the most part has been pretty much the same. Smash Bros has usually been the only in-person tryouts that we've ever done. And unfortunately, like our coordinator for that didn't want to do it at first, but then he saw the prize pool for one of the tournaments and he was like, okay, I think we should be able to do this now, you know? So there are definitely still free to play like tournaments, and there's some tournaments that you just have to pay either a small fee. There's some that charge a little bit more. We're going to go mostly for, you know, the free ones and the ones that don't charge as much, because we don't want to put our players in a position to where I can't pay for everything because the funding's so low right now. But we've been managing. The only thing we won't be able to do for our players is kind of have like, we started in-person socials just so they could meet each other, talk to each other more, or like teams could just talk to each other outside of like literally just like Overwatch and League and all of that. So that's the one unfortunate thing. But other than that, it's been pretty smooth so far.
Yeah, team dinners on Zoom have been interesting, but good.
That's a good idea. I've tried that one.
There's like services out there now where you can like DoorDash all of your like Zoom participants and they'll like get their DoorDash like within that hour of your meeting. It's crazy. It's a whole market for it now.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this eSport panelist discussion regarding esports and education. We had Brianna Rangel from Mission Library as our head moderator, Cassie Garza from Pan American Library as backup moderator, as well as Edward Mayberry from Guerra Library.